Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. We continue with our studies of the Book of Allah, Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu and some Islamic personalities. We start off with the intentions for seeking knowledge and teaching. I intend to seek knowledge and to teach, to benefit myself and to benefit others, to remind myself and to remind others, to profit myself and to profit others, to urge adherence to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to invite to guidance, to guide to that which is good, seeking the face of Allah, His pleasure, His closeness, and His reward, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's continue on with Al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Let's continue on with our Fatiha. أعوذ بالله دعاء بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم ارزقنا يا ربي فهم النبي وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين في عافيتي يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين وفقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل واهدنا إلى سواء السبيل اللهم انفعنا وارفعنا وعرفنا بالعلم النافع وانفعنا به أنفسنا وأهلنا وأوطاننا وديارنا وجميع المسلمين يا إله العالمين الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We are with our legacy. We continue on with the book Saviors of the Islamic Spirit, and we have Khawaja Nizamuddin Awliya. Okay, we continue on with his achievements, his way of living, and how he helps people around him. Renunciation of the world, a clear and intelligible exposition of the reality of renunciation was made by the Khawaja in these words. Last week, we saw groups, him not for those who just leave the world completely. So what does he mean by renunciation of the world? Renunciation does not mean that one should put off his clothes and don a loincloth. That means to show that you are poor. That's not renunciation is saying, right? A man can dress properly and take food and also enjoy what is lawfully available to him, but he should never try to stop this, nor should he entangle his heart in anything. So you dress up, but you're not obsessed with the dressing. You don't live life to dress up. You don't go out all your way to buy all the kinds of dresses that is so expensive. That's to show off your ability to dress, or even to take the kinds of food, eat all kinds of food, gorge over the food and live life just thinking of the kind of food they're going to eat every day. That is, of course, what it is. This is simple. You can dress up nicely still with reasonably clothes, reasonable clothes, good food, but don't overeat. And that's what Rasulullah taught us, right? We eat only to live, not to live to eat. Right? And we shouldn't, if we have to eat, he says, this is if you have to eat, the maximum you can eat is it should be 1/3 of your stomach. 1/3 food, 1/3 water, and 1/3 air. That's what he says, so that you do not fall sick and you only eat when you're hungry. and also enjoy what is lawfully available to him. Yeah, he has his family, he has children, he has wife, he has spouses. I mean, he or she, they have got spouses, and you have fun with them, you interact with them, you play with them. So that is nothing wrong, because that is what life is all about. That is what Allah gives us life for. But he should never try to stop these, nor should he entangle his heart. So don't be completely in love, entangle your heart until you forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the correct way of renunciation of worldly desires. Kinds of obedience. Obedience to Allah is of two kinds. The Khawaja once explained, obligatory and transient. So there's two kinds of obedience. One is obligatory and the other one is transient. The obedience falling in the first category consists of those acts which benefit the person complying with a command, as for example, prayer, the salat, fasting. So these are obligatory, and you have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they are obligatory. Hajj, and he adds a recollection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is reminders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We remember Allah, we think of Allah, so that will be inclusive of reciting the Quran, fikir, thinking of the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing zikir, right, and also pondering and such. Transient obedience is that which extends the benefits to others, such as restoring harmony between Muslims and to foster good relationship, showing consideration or benevolence to others. So that is under obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, because that would be these are instructions in the Quran. There's enough instructions in the Quran to remind us of the importance of unity, in importance of keeping good relations, importance of kind words, importance of consideration and gentleness to others and forgiving and things like that. The obedience to the latter category is highly meritorious and shall have limitless reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the second part, which is about relationships with human beings, and that is regarded very highly, kindness and care and concern. Absolute sincerity is essential for the acceptance of obligatory obedience, but transient obedience will be recompensed by Allah howsoever it is rendered. Right. So of course, first obligatory is important because first obedience, the first type of obedience is necessary. As a Muslim, you have to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as because you declare yourself as a Muslim, in which you say the Shahada, you bear witness that there is no God but Allah, which means that you have decided to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have decided to take him as your God, and that is why you must incline to him and obey him at all times in all the instructions that is wajib. Right? And then of course the transient obedience is something which you do out of your own volition, right? That means out of your own wish, your desire, you're aware that it's very important in life to have good relations, to create harmony, right? To be kind, to be caring, to be considerate, to have empathy for people and all these kinds of emotions, right? Which helps you to foster good relations with others. Miracles worked by saints. The miracles worked by the saints were held by Khawaja to be resulting from their total absorption and intoxication in the love of Allah. So only saints who are completely absorbed in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they are intoxicated, will be, they are lost, right? Their minds are lost in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are attracted devotees, says the Khawaja about the saints working miracles, whereas the prophets have a placid disposition and serene spirit. So that he's differentiating between the prophets and the saints, as we saw in the last lesson. Some Sufis, some so-called Sufis, insist that the saints have a higher a higher position, higher maqam, higher station than the prophets, because the saints are always in complete absorption or remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas the prophets have got duties to do. They have to pass the message, they have to interact with people, they've got a few other things which the Sufis consider as worldly things to be done, but that is not the truth. So he has denounced these ideas and said that the prophets, despite their seeing, having to do things which interaction with people, their ibadah is as compared, their recollections, their zikrs, and as compared to the saints is much more of a higher standard than theirs. So it's a placid, they're calm, they're quiet, they are peaceful, they have a special spirit in them, right, which Allah has blessed them. Of course, the prophets is the highest of all the stations of human being, of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why, unlike the prophets, miracles become an obstacle for the mystics in their journey of spiritual development. So he's talking about mystics and their miracles. And sometimes miracles can be seen as something that is as their sometimes some of them are affected by the miracles that are bestowed on them, and actually affects them in their journey of spiritual development. So the prophets are concerned the miracles are there for them to highlight the powers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with. And they are always in a state of calmness and peacefulness, compared to some of the mystics who are in this journey. On the other hand, the love of Allah imparts stability to the state of elevation. So it's very important to instill this love of Allah. And there's a lot of training to it for us to actually really be in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many of us can really say that we are absorbed in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and are entrenched in that love so much so that during our salat we get lost because we are with our beloved? Not many of us are able to, because we do not have that kind of training of to be in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you are in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are here. Loving is, of course, to appreciate, right, to honor, to realize the greatness of being, to get with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the state of elevation. So it imparts stability as you move higher up in the spiritual ladder, right? The love of Allah allows you to be stable, right, in your life. Knowledge of the prophets. The Khawaja classified knowledge into three grades: vis-a-vis, perceptive, intellectual, and divine. We have perceptions through our senses, such as the taste of different edibles or the various types of smells. So we perceive things by the senses that Allah has blessed us with. The knowledge in regard to these is obtained through the senses. So then again, we are aware that not all of us have the same sense of perception. Right, everyone has a different sense of taste. Somebody might say it's delicious, it's food, but that delicious food in itself, right, is different for every person. Somebody might taste that food. The same food can have different tastes with different people and different reactions to that food. So he's saying that this is perceptions of different people. Like a man once, I think it was Imam Ghazali, somebody approached Imam Ghazali and asked Imam Ghazali, how can you please describe for me? He's not a married man, right? He's not a married man. So he wants Imam Ghazali to describe to him what is intimacy with the spouse. Imam Ghazali says, I can't tell you. You have to experience it. It's impossible. So that's perception. All right, then we go on the second grade comes the knowledge obtained through intellect. So you think, you study, you find out things, and so you learn things by using your intellect. This is also of two kinds, acquired and intuitive. So acquired intellect, acquired knowledge is have to be learned and have to be studied. But intuitive is somehow you get an idea of things by looking, it's intuition, right? Intuition is like you think you are right, you think that's the way it should be, so that's intuition, right? Whether people agree with your intuition on is another aspect altogether. But basically, there's an idea that you have that you believe in that idea of yours. So it is not something that is taught to you, but it comes to you because of your experiences, of your understanding, of your knowledge. The Khawaja further explained that even the intuitive knowledge is not divine, but to speak of acquired knowledge. So he's talking of knowledge here. So we need to differentiate between acquired knowledge, intuitive knowledge, and divine knowledge. Excepting those for whom the doors of divine knowledge are open, who can say what its features are? So nobody really knows the exact features of divine knowledge unless you are blessed with these divine knowledge. Nobody who gains knowledge through his intellect, either by his own effort or through intuition, can find his way to the divine knowledge, although he can derive pleasure from his intellectual knowledge. So he's talking about knowledge here, right? So this knowledge here, he's saying that you have knowledge, you work hard to gain knowledge. So that's knowledge through acquiring knowledge. Then you have knowledge through your intuition, by your own ideas and concepts that you have, logic and whatever, and ideas that you think is right. But these knowledge he cannot find his way through divine knowledge. Nobody can do it. Divine knowledge is a knowledge that is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he can derive pleasure from his knowledge, his knowledge which is acquired or which is through intuition. In order to illustrate his point, the Khawaja told a story of a certain saint who desired to record the manifestations of reality dawning upon his heart during the moments of ecstatic illumination. So in order to illustrate his point, this Khawaja told a story of a certain saint. There's a saint here who wanted to record the manifestations of reality dawning upon his heart. So as he moves through the states of ecstatic illuminations, right, he wants to record what goes on in his heart while he is in that state of ecstatic illumination. In fact, he wrote quite a lot to express his feelings, but ultimately confessed that human language could not convey what he wanted to describe. So he realized that no matter how much he tried to describe and explain what he went through in his ecstatic illuminations, he can't do it. All right, so that is knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we call it ilmu ladunni. Ilmu ladunni is a knowledge especially from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we have that with the story of Nabi Khidir and Nabi Musa alayhi salam. So Nabi Khidir had knowledge of the unseen, when Nabi Musa did not have knowledge of the unseen. That is why the first thing that Nabi Khidir said to Nabi Musa was that, how can you be patient over something that you have no knowledge of? So because you don't know, you can't be patient. And true enough, we saw that Nabi Musa actually failed all three tests because he just couldn't hold himself. That's being patient, is to hold yourself. He can't hold himself when he saw what Nabi Khidir did, which he felt was wrong in many ways. Of course, in the eyes of those without that divine knowledge blessed on them. Love of the world. Once someone said to the Khawaja, there are some who love the world, while there are others who hate it. There are three types of persons, replied the Khawaja. Some cherish the world so much that they are always crazy about it, and their number is quite large. And most of the people in this world are crazy over the world. They run after the world. They do everything for the world. Everything is done to get as much as possible from the world. And people who says we live life once, we should enjoy as much as we can, right? So that is their concept when they are crazy over the world. There are others who not only hate the world, but hold it in contempt and always sneer at it. And there's other extremes. So these are two extremes. One extreme is obsessed with the world. Another extreme is so afraid of the world and scorn the world and consider the world is dangerous, consider the world is horrible, consider the world is full of evil and whatever. And they sneer at it. There is also a third category who neither hold it dear nor detest it. They neither eulogize the world nor frown upon it. And these are better than both the former categories. Somehow we are people of the middle ground, right? We are matul wusta, right, in the middle ground. So we don't go to both extremes. We live in this world. We enjoy the various blessings that Allah has blessed us with the world. We've got family, we've got children, we play, we interact, right? But we also not obsessed with the world. We don't fall in love with the world because we know we have another world and the next world, and we don't hate the world, right? But we don't notice, we don't realize that there are certain parts of the world which we should not be in favor of, right? In that sense, we have reservations against those things in the world. Thereafter, the Khawajah told a story. Once a man came to Rabi'ah Basri and started denouncing the world. She replied, please do not come again to me. Okay, who is Rabi'ah Basri? Some call her Raba'ah. She's a saintess, not saintess. She's a saint, a lady saint, right? Who people call her Ashika. There's another name of hers, because she is deeply in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The word Ashik. The word Ashik means to be absorbed in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she's from Basra, Rabi'ah. And this man came to her to talk about how much she denounced the world. And she told him, don't come again to me. You seem to be so enamored of the world that you are never tired of talking about it. So she's concerned, you seem to be in love with the world because you're always talking about the world. People who does not love the world don't talk about the world. All right, recitation of the Quran. Khawajah once told about the 3 ways of grades of reciting the Quran. He said, the first is that whatever you recite, its pith and substance sinks into your heart. So it's that kind of recital, right? The core of the Quran, the parts of the Quran just goes deep into your heart. The second grade of his recital is that your heart is awakened to the awe of Allah. Well, the third grade, so you will realize that you are reading the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So your heart are in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for blessing us with his great words, his own words, right, which invigorate us, which causes lots of good to enter our hearts, which cure us also of all the maladies of the world. But the third grade is that your heart remains attracted to Allah so long as the recital continues. So there is the connection with Allah, right? Maybe not as strong and as deeply connected, but there is still that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our recitals of the Quran. One should always be aware of the fact, the Khawajah continued, that the recitation of the book of Allah confers a blessing undeserved by him. What it means is that, right, you are whoever reads the Quran will be given such great blessings that actually he doesn't deserve it. That means the blessing is just so great, so big. So it's you can't imagine the blessings, compared to your reading a little bit of reading, and then the blessings that Allah gives you is just, you don't even realize. But if that be not possible, one should at least keep in mind the rewards promised for the recitals of the Holy Scripture. So if you are not able to be in the 3 stages, first stage, where the pith and the substance of the Quran just gets deep into you. Second stage, you are in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while reading the Quran. Third stage, where you are attracted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as long as you recite the Quran, then at least realize that there's lots of rewards for the recital of the Holy Quran. So that pushes you to go on reading and reading and reading the Holy Quran. And the sad state in many of our Muslim communities is that some people learn the Quran and learn how to read the Quran, and they finish the Quran and say, okay, I finished the Quran. There's no such thing as finishing the Quran. The Quran is a lifelong reading again and again and again and again. And it is a connection with you and the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Khawajah has himself acknowledged, he did not leave anything in writing, but his greatest productions were his spiritual sons, pure of heart and perfect in knowledge and demeanor, who were examples of rectitude, piety, and truthfulness. So he seems that he didn't write anything, but people write about him. As you can see, we have this great literature on him. But what he produced, according to this article, is that his disciples are amazing. Right, so as we are aware, he has no children, and he didn't get married, but he has thousands of followers and he trained them, and he built these people spiritually, teach them how to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they've got pure heart, they've got perfect knowledge, they've got great, amazing manners, and they are examples of rectitude, piety, and truthfulness. So he has brought up so many of these human beings. However, Amir Hassan Ali Sajazi and Mir Khurd has narrated numerous sayings and teachings of the Khawaja, which bear witness to his deep knowledge and incisive intellect. So his students have produced the various sayings of the Khawaja. He himself didn't write, but they produce it, and that is where people gain knowledge, or people have a realization of how deep his knowledge is and how great is his intellect. Blessings and benignity. Before we unfold the story of Khawaja Nizamuddin's remarkable achievement in enkindling the zeal for moral rectitude and spiritual uplift in countless hearts, especially at the time when the success of the Muslim arms had brought in its train the forgetfulness of Allah and given a free rein to self-indulgence, let us recapitulate the method evolved by the pure-hearted mystics to rejuvenate the religious vigor of the widespread Muslim population, is explained in the first volume of this book. All right, let's try to digest this whole statement. All right, so I'm going to tell a story of how he achieved what is important to rekindle and kindle the zeal for moral rectitude. Okay, the aim is to make people have moral rectitude, the desire to improve themselves morally, to uplift themselves spiritually, especially so when the time is really not easy, right? Because the Muslims army had brought in it has achieved success and material wealth, that people start to forget Allah. Why? Because they are obsessed with, they are indulging themselves in all kinds of luxuries, food, pay, status, enjoyment of the world, all kinds of things. So how did he do it? So it's like in this modern world right now, we see people are all obsessed with all kinds of things that doesn't bring them to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how their moral behavior is just something that is so sad to look at. They have no character, no moral, no great manners, nothing at all, no manners. In fact, they are just rude people, right, out there among our youngsters, even in the adults and people like that. So how is he able to remove, to purify these people, to rejuvenate the religious vigor of the population, the Muslim population, when they are all indulging in the temptations of the world? How did he do it? Let's move on. After the first few generations, religious seminaries and educational institutions too did not provide any answer to the problem because of the vast population of Muslims and the mundane preoccupations of the people. Now, how does the vast population of Muslims, right, makes it quite difficult, right, for these religious seminaries and educational institutions to provide answers to the problem? Because there's too many people to handle, right? Muslims, people are becoming Muslims, but how much of Islam they have, that is the main problem here. As Islam spread far and wide, people are embracing Islam, but the knowledge is not embedded in them, and the characters of the Muslims are not embedded in them. And then again, there is the preoccupations of the people of things which are just not necessary in life. The problem of making arrangements for a continued and concerted effort for the education and training of the people in religious standards and practices, and infusing a breath of new life to the vast numbers spread over far-off lands, defied solution in the absence of a truly Islamic state. Right. All right. There need to be a concerted effort, right, to make arrangements for education and the training of the people in religious standards. So who is it left to? It seems that the government is not doing it, right? And if they are doing it, maybe it's not the way it should be done, or there's some lapses in the way the training and the education is put forth. The idea of having religious standards, understanding the religious standards, and to practice it, and to infuse a breath of new life in the vast numbers of Muslims all over the land, right? Sometimes it's very difficult, especially when the Islamic State is not truly Islamic. Yes, India was under the rule of many Muslim kings and sultans, and we saw that many of the sultans are not really into Islam, or if they do, is more of rather customary or more of patronizing sheikhs and things like that, but not really deep in Islam, and the rules are still not really that good. We've seen that in the past centuries of our learnings. So the foremost business, or rather the end of the caliphate, was, in the words of Caliph Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, to guide the people in moral rectitude rather than to collect the revenues for the conduct of administration. Right, so that is what Abdul Aziz and Umar Abdul Aziz has mentioned. Most importantly is character building, improvement of their character, understanding of things, right? As Rasulullah has mentioned, he is sent to improve character, to show the best of character a human being can have. And it's not to collect revenues for the conduct of administration. So that is not the job of the caliphate, where Umar Abdul Aziz can say it's not about getting money, right? To administer the empire or the country. The then Muslim states were, however, not only indifferent to this fundamental objective, but were extremely allergic to any movement or criticism on his score, which could pose a threat to their political supremacy. So that was happening. We saw that with the Umayyads. We saw that with the Abbasids. We saw that the religious scholars were not were actually abused and jailed when they goes into criticizing the government and the ways of the government. So it's not really easy. That was a big problem then. Thus, these governments, being suspicious of all efforts made for the resurgence of Islamic spirit, and erroneously taking these as movements designed to build up political leadership, lost no time in crushing them. This is, as you can see, this is happening long time ago, years ago, and it's still happening right now in some of the countries, right, where the Muslims are perceived as dangerous elements in societies and has to be stopped from being fanatical and things like that. You see that in Algeria, where the ladies are not allowed to put on the scarf. It's in Tunisia. These are all Muslim countries, but they put a clamp down. They clamp down on such show where they are concerned show of Islam, and they feel that these are exhibits of fanaticism in Islam. Right, and there's not only the ladies, but a lot of other activities are clamped down. Teachings of Islam are clamped down because they fear, as they call it, fanaticism, or when the Muslims they uprise against the government because the government is not Islamic enough. So there's always this fear of being being overthrown by Islamic extremists, as they call them, and so they decided to crush these movements. So in these circumstances, there was no way left to revivify the religious spirit and fill the people with an enthusiasm, zeal, and self-confidence for reintroduction of the precepts of religion in their daily life. So it's not easy. So it is no way to revivify, to relieve the religious spirit and to fill the people with enthusiasm, zeal, and self-confidence for reintroduction of the precepts of religion in their daily life. So it wasn't easy to allow the people to reintroduce Islam into their lives. The only alternative left was to call upon the people to take an oath of allegiance for the purpose. So the way around it is to gather people who would come to you and agree to hold on to certain certain ideas and concepts and values and obligations, and that is to have an oath of allegiance. Following the footsteps of Rasulullah SAW, it had become necessary that the guide of spiritual and moral excellence should obtain an oath, or the bay'at, as it is called. Some call it bay'ah, and some call it bay'ah. The bay'ah is not something new. The bay'ah has been introduced by Rasulullah SAW. Whoever wants to become a Muslim must take a bay'ah with Rasulullah SAW. And the man will hold his hand and in the taking of the bay'ah, but the ladies, she does not allow them to. The lady doesn't hold their hands when taking the bay'ah, but that is a promise and an agreement, right? So it's called an oath to abide by certain rules and regulations. It is called from the people willing to offer sincere penitence, they must repent and undertaking to lead a virtuous life in future in accordance with the directions of their mentor. Their mentor is a proper person, is a person of great spiritual prowess, attainment, and great moral excellence. In placing oneself under the instruction of an inspired guide meant that he was fairly started upon in his journey to the end of purification of spirit and moral rectitude. So in taking up the bay'ah, right, you decide to be instructed by this guide, and he starts on his journey, right, to purify his soul and to improve his morals. The oath of allegiance enjoined a much more onerous responsibility on the mentor himself. So that means the mentor has a very strong responsibility to guide these people so that they purify their souls and purify their morals, their akhlaq. The guide or the spiritual teacher had to lead the wandering soul of the disciple, taking the benefit stage by stage, from cleansing of his spiritual impurities, renouncing the love of worldly temptations and desires, wealth and honor, infusing a spirit of moral uprightness and correct ethical behavior, following the teachings contained in the Qurans and the traditions to the illumination of the pupil's soul. So this is his job, and it's not an easy job, definitely. But it has to be done stage by stage to cleanse them of the spiritual impurities, to renounce love of the worldly temptations and desires and to renounce temptations, love for wealth, honor. And then after you renounce that, so first remove the cleanse of the spiritual impurities, remove love of whatever is of the world, and then to infuse a spirit of moral uprightness and correct ethical behavior as in the teachings of the Quran and traditions. Then it goes on to the illumination of the people's souls. So this was in truth what the bay'ah meant, and by which the inspired souls tried to infuse into their disciples through preaching and personal example, loving care and unalloyed sincerity and inner vitality of spirit and strength of moral integrity. So the one who leads these people need to be really strong, need to be properly trained in the Islamic sciences, right? And in the purification of the soul. He himself has to lead by example, right? He has to inspire the souls. He has to infuse into his disciples. He need by preaching, by showing good examples, by loving care, and by sincerely caring for them. Unalloyed sincerity, that means the sincerity is not mixed with all kinds of other hopes and ideas and agendas, only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An inner vitality of spirit, to be strong in his spirit and his moral sense also. So it's not an easy thing to do. When you want to handhold people all the way until they become strong, no, most of us would give up. So that is why the person, especially we have seen this Khawaja, right? His training has caused him to be so strong that he could handle thousands of people a day, right? Coming to him to get his directions and bay'at. As the experience shows, the reformers and renovators of faith did succeed in reviving the true spirit true faith and tapping in new sources of popular strength in their own times through this tried and infallible method, which just copied the procedure and technique followed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are the people who revived the religions. That's why they are called saviors of the Islamic spirit. They were able to, Allah has blessed them with that special, profound ability, right, to help the souls, the wandering souls around them, those lost souls around them, those who didn't pray, those who continued to drink. Drinking was quite rampant and such things. Innumerable persons have been provided with an opportunity of not only adopting a virtuous life through this method, but have also been led to attain even the stage of divine acquaintance and love by the inspired teachers, guides, and teachers. So not only are they moving towards a virtuous life, but they actually, through the various trainings and care and concern of the guides, they actually attain divine acquaintance. That means they get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and love him, and their life is all about loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not, being in love with the world and their desires. Bay'at, a pledge and a covenant. The bay'at implies a determination to completely turn away from sin and to pattern one's life in accordance with the ordinances of Allah and his apostles. That's what's a bay'at. Right? No sin. When you make a bay'at with your teacher, that means you are making an agreement to turn away from all sin as much as you can, and your life is to lead your life according to the way, according to the laws and regulations of Allah and his apostles sallallahu alaihi wasallam. None of his biographers have mentioned what Khawaja required the intending disciples to say or promise while administering the bay'at to them. But the Khawaja has himself left an account of the manner in which his own Sheikh, Khawaja Fariduddin, used to accept disciples in his spiritual paternity. Right? So Khawaja's way of doing it is not mentioned, but the way of Fariduddin was mentioned. Since the Khawaja had a deep and enduring affection for his spiritual guide, that is Fariduddin, and tried to follow his footsteps, it can be assumed that he would have also acted similarly on such occasions. So as the Khawaja has described what Fariduddin did, and we would assume that that is what the Khawaja did also, as with what Fariduddin did. Speaking of his Sheikh, the Khawaja says, when anybody came to the Sheikh, Fariduddin, with the intention of taking the bay'at, he used to ask him to recite the Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Ikhlas. So two surahs, Fatiha and Ikhlas. These two are very profound surahs. Of course, all the surahs are amazing, but they have their own special blessings in them and special uses in them also. Then the Shaykh himself recited the last 5 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, followed by the verse, Allah is witness, and there is no God except him, and the angels and the men of learning too are witnesses, maintaining his creation in justice. There is no God except him, the Almighty, the Wise. Lo, religion with Allah is the surrender. In the Dina inda Allahil Islam. All right, so this is Surah Al-Imran verses 18 to 19. So he himself, right, so Allah is witness. So they made an agreement, right, not to commit sin. As mentioned, the bay'at includes not to commit sin and to follow the ways of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So at the end of it all, he says, Allah is witness. And there is no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the angels and men of learning are witnesses. And Allah maintains his creation in justice. There is no God except him, the Almighty, the Wise. So, and the religion with Allah is Islam. So we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, to his will and his guidance. Therefore, he used to tell the disciples, you have taken the bay'at on the hands of this weakling, on the hands of my Shaykh and his sheikhs, and on the hands of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that the bay'at is actually also has a sanad, that means has a link to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from Rasulullah sallallahu to the sheikh, to the sheikh, to the sheikh, to the sheikh, and finally to his teacher here, who declares himself as a weakling. And of course, that is to ensure that you do not feel great about yourself. And now you swear an oath to Allah Almighty that you would guard your hands, feet, and eyes from the ways of sin and betake the path of Sharia and the way of life chalked out by it. So that is the bay'at. The bay'at is to avoid all forms of sin and to move in the path of the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. White circles of disciples. The Khawaja permitted everyone desiring to take the bay'at to enter the circle of the disciples without putting him to any test or trial. So he doesn't test them how good they are, what is their knowledge in Islam. All that he doesn't take into account. He just allows them in. Whoever wants to take bay'at, come and take your bay'at. So the bay'at being a pledge and a covenant to follow in the steps of one's spiritual guide for the rest of one's life. A question might arise as to why the Khawaja administered the bay'at so easily to everyone. So this is the question: how come, and it's such a very powerful or a very difficult agreement, make a covenant, a very strong covenant, very difficult covenant and pledge, right, to live life by the ways of the spiritual, by listening to the spiritual guide. So why anyone? Why not have some kind of quality control over the people? The Khawaja has himself given an answer to this question. The well-known historian and author of Tarikh Firoz Shah Ziauddin Barni says that once he happened to remain with the Khawaja from early morning till a little before noon. During this time, quite a good number of people took the bay'at on the hands of Khawaja. So people are coming and taking bay'at from the Khawaja. It occurred to his mind that the earlier mystics used to be very cautious in taking disciples, but the Khawaja perhaps allowed everybody to take the benefit out of his generosity and large-heartedness. So in his heart, was thinking, it's quite different now from all other sheikhs, who used to be very careful on who to become his disciples. But Khawaja seems to be allowing everybody, doesn't even bother to check them out. And most probably because he's generous and large-hearted. He says that he thought of asking the reason for it from the Khawaja, but his doubt was revealed to the Khawaja by divine grace, who at once asked, Maulana Ziauddin, you ask all sorts of questions, but you have never asked me why I accept everybody as my disciple. So it seems that he asked questions, but this deep question in him, he was not able to express. But people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they actually know the what's in the hearts of their disciples, of their followers, and they know who was bad and who's good also. Taken aback, Ziauddin touched the feet of the Khawaja and said that the doubt had struck his mind on several occasions, and a few moments before he had thought of asking about it, but Allah had revealed the secret to him. So he said, yeah, I've thought of it and I wanted to ask you, but Allah told you first. Thereupon the Khawaja replied, divine wisdom endows every age with a singularity, with the result that the characteristics, habits, and manners of the people in every age, bearing, of course, a few persons, differ from their predecessors. All right, and divine wisdom endows every age with a singularity, with the result that the characteristics, habits, and manners of people in every age, of course, not all of them are the same, bearing, of course, a few persons, right, differ from their predecessors. People are different in every age, right? So you got to realize that very importantly. This is a matter of experience. So through experience, you understand that there are differences among people. The purpose behind the bay'at is that a disciple expels from his heart everything except Allah and gets absorbed in the vastness of the divine presence, as you find it explained in the books on the mysticism. So that is the whole idea of the bay'at, is that your heart is inclined to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and not and get absorbed in the divine presence. I mean, you get involved, you get absorbed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the mystics of the old never accepted anybody under their spiritual paternity unless they were satisfied that the intending disciple had cleansed his heart of all earthly objects and desires. So he explained the position of the mystics or the sheikhs before him. They want to make sure that this person has removed all earthly objects and desires. But Sheikh Saifuddin Bakhrazi, Sheikh Abu Sa'id Abul Khair, Sheikh Sahabuddin Surawadi, And Sheikh Fariduddin accepted everyone desirous of spiritual purification under their surveillance. So he mentioned a few sheikh, right? And of course, one of them is his sheikh, Sheikh Fariduddin, who seemed to accept all who wishes to, or all who wish to purify themselves. I do not lay claim to the same spiritual excellence as those elevated souls had attained, but I would like to explain why I do not take the same precaution as the early sheikhs used to take. One of the reasons is that I have been informed by a large number of persons that a good many of my disciples completely turned a new leaf, abstain from sins, and began offering prayers regularly. So his acceptance of them has caused them to change completely and to avoid sins and also pray regularly. So these are people who used not to pray or pray maybe once a day or twice a day, but under being his disciples has caused them to change. Some even devote considerable time in recollection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some have decided to sit and do their zikrs, all right, a large number of times, a big portion of their life. Now, if I were to make sure that they have completely disentangled their hearts from their worldly desires before I administer bay'at to them, that would be deprived of whatever spiritual upliftment they attain through it. So he saw the bay'at as necessary, right, to help them. Whenever anyone wants to is a request for a bay'at, then there is that sense in that person to purify himself. So he's not going to stop them just because they are still entangled or their hearts are still entangled in the worldly desire. So he saw it as that they have sincerity. So he allows it, and by doing that, right, they become worldly. They become spiritually uplifted. The other reason is that my sheikh permitted me to take disciples without my asking for it or even entertaining a desire for the same, right? So he allows, his sheikh has allowed it to him. So that's why he's doing this. When I see a Muslim coming to me with bated breath, in all humility, is tired, running, rushing to the sheikh and humbling himself and submitting to make repentance for his sins, I accept his statement and administer him the bay'at. So I saw that sincerity in him, right? Because he is repentant and he wishes to be a good Muslim. But I'm told that many of them really abjure their evil practices after taking the oath of fealty. So after the bay'at, they actually remove all their evil practices. All right, we'll take a break here. Continue in 10 minutes.
Of your life.
Absolutely. We have a thing in the UK called death cafes, actually, where people go and they contemplate death, or if somebody's passing away and they sit down there, they discuss it. And even many people actually, as you were saying, they contemplate it, but they actually plan. They plan, yeah, death cafe.
Over coffee?
Yeah, over coffee.
Over coffee?
Over coffee.
See, that just shows you they're not thinking about death. Because Abu Hamid al-Ghazali said, if you really contemplated death, if it was mentioned before a meal, you wouldn't be able to eat. And that's why it's makruh to mention death during food.
That's a very fun point, absolutely. But yeah, they're quite secular, but they're open to people. I'm sure you touched something, I think something earlier, which you mentioned about the fact that we live in a society where we have no shame anymore because everything's
no shame. Yeah. No,
there's a fine line between what we know is predestination and free will. And I'm sure you come across this, and there's many Muslims, or just generally people in secular society that we live in, obviously in the West, when people say, well, if everything's preordained, what's the point of free will? What's the fine balance when you're dealing with people of faith? Because sometimes these questions come along and people think that they have the right to do what they want then.
Yeah. The qadr is, it's probably the most difficult thing in theology, is dealing with the qadr, which is why the Prophet ﷺ advised us not to delve into it. All of us experience free will. I don't think anybody, if I want, like I can stand up, I can sit down. We all experience it. And to deny that aspect of our lives is to deny our own human experience. At the same time, we know that there are so many variables in any given situation for it to come together that the hand of God is so evident. So, for instance, you did not choose your parents, even though some New Age people claim you do. You did not choose your parents, and you did not choose your privileges, because some of us have far more privilege than other people in the world. As a test, as a tribulation, Allah privileges some people over others in the Quran. That He faddala ba'dakum ala ba'd. He had privileged some of you over others as a test to see how you behave. So people that are less privileged, their tribulation is patience, and people that are more privileged, their tribulation is gratitude. And are they going to help those who are less privileged? So those are all things that are just, we have no say in many things. Health is another thing. I mean, you can do everything, and you should. And you should blame yourself if you're not taking care of yourself and you get sick. But if you do all the right things, if you eat right, if you exercise, if you sleep well, if you do all the right things, and then you get sick, that's qadar. And there's nothing you can do about that. So it's just recognizing anything that's happened, you have to see it as qadar Allah ma shaa fa'al. But anything that's yet to happen, you have to see that it's you that's going to choose. And then you need to take responsibility for it once you've chosen it. But don't open that door of, oh, if only, because the Prophet said, no, saying if opens up the door of shaitan. So if only I took my child to the hospital 10 minutes before, he wouldn't have died. It's my fault. No.
Yeah.
If it happened, it was meant to happen at that time. Everybody has an ajal. Even nations have ajal. Like America, we don't know where it is in its lifespan. But as far as I can tell, I think it's pretty old. Yeah, because all of the signs of societal collapse can be seen now in the United States. If you read any of the great historians of societal patterns, if you read Spengler, if you read Toynbee, if you read Sir John Gluck Pasha, if you read Al-Maqrizi, the great Ibn Khaldun, all of these can be seen now. I mean, we're at late stage. One of the things in late stage societies is celebrities become very, very important. In healthy societies, celebrities are the lowest people on the totem pole. Like in India, it's a well-known fact that Hindu Bollywood actors used Muslim names because they were so ashamed and they didn't want to bring shame on their family. And Muslim actors used Hindu names because they were so ashamed that they were actors. But now it's becoming very popular now to be actors in India, which is a sign that they're in bad shape. Because entertainers, it's wonderful to have entertainment, but entertainers are not, they're not emergency room doctors. They're not linemen that are risking
emergency room doctors.
I know, but they're not linemen that are risking their lives to get your electricity back up when the storm takes it down, right? They're not they're not EMTs or paramedics, that are risking their lives to. I mean, let's be realistic. And even somebody I grew up with and really liked his lyrics a lot was Dylan. And Dylan, somebody asked him about it. He said, well, what's in it? He said, he said, entertainers are very low in my estimation. He's an entertainer. He said, they're very low. He said, if I was going to come back again, I'd rather be something like a brain surgeon, somebody that actually did something, and probably that's not totally fair, because I think a lot of poets and even a lot of people derive great solace from music in our culture because they don't have things like the Quran and other things to get that solace from. So there are a lot of people that has helped them through difficult times, especially meaningful lyrics and things like that. But generally, entertainment it's just not a high thing in any culture.
Yeah, it's lots of food for thought there. You're absolutely right. Celebrity culture is everything and anything right now. I mean, if you look at social media, it's all celebrity led, and algorithms, and you know,
And people
the-
obsessed with numbers, like people obsessed with followers and how many followers they have, and it's just really sad. Jalaluddin Rumi said, "Your audience is only always an audience of one."
Allah.
Like just put God in your heart and the meaning of God, obviously. Put that in your heart, and then not worry, and do what you think is right, and let things fall where they may, because we can't determine if people are going to like me or they're not going to like me. If you just have to be true to yourself and to do what you believe, and do it honestly, and do it without compromising principles, and do what you think is right. And we all make our ijtihadat, and they're either right or they're wrong. And we can be deluded, and I'm very aware of that. We can delude ourselves, and that's why we should always be careful and think deeply about things. But generally, we have this short time, and we should be making the best of it.
Absolutely concur. Sheikh, we've just got some comments on Facebook, and some of the comments coming through, people are asking about the death meditations that you spoke about and where they can access them. Could you just give a few comments about that?
Well, I mean, the best ones are Surat Yasin, Surat Waqi'ah, and Surat Al-Mulk. Because if you read those three surahs with any reflection, you will see that essentially those three surahs, which are meant to be recited every day, all three of them are death meditations. So that's one place to begin. The other one is some of the Salaf. There was one of the Andalusian scholars who actually, I mean, I wouldn't recommend this, but he actually dug a grave in his backyard, and he used to, when he woke up in the morning, he would go and he would sit in the grave, lie down in it, and then he would open his eyes as if he was given another day. And I mean, that's very extreme, but it shows you that how serious they took these things. One thing that you can do is you can literally lie down, and I do this sometimes, and you if you do some like breathing, you can just breathe like 20 times deep breaths, and then hold your breath for a minute or two. I mean, I can usually hold my breath for 3 minutes, and just no breathing, and then you literally just imagine yourself in your grave, and the angels are going to come and ask you, who is your Lord, who is your prophet, and what your deen is, and how you're going to be able to ask. Because Allah yuthabbit alladhina amanu bil qawl thabit. Those who are firm in their faith, Allah will make firm their answers. But those who were hypocrites or who wavered in their faith, they'll be too frightened to answer.
Just
stop here. Allah. Continue with our book Al-Wafi. It's a commentary of the 40 Nawawiyah. Right, we were at Hadith 23. We'll just read through just to get the blessings of the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Kullu khairin sadaqah. عن أبي مالك الحارث بن عاصم أشعري رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الطهور شطر الإيمان والحمد لله تملأ الميزان وسبحان الله والحمد لله تملأان أو تملأ ما بين السماوات والأرض والصلاة نور والصدقات برهان والصبر ضياء والقرآن حجة لك أو عليك كل الناس يغدو فبائع النفس فمؤتقها أو موبقها رواه المسلم. All right, that's it. Meaning of it, it is an authority. The good is charity. Every good is charity. It is an authority. Abu Malik al-Harith ibn Asim al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, who said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, purity is half of faith. Alhamdulillah fills the scales. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, both fill off fields, whatever is between the heavens and the earth. Prayer is light. Charity is proof. Patience is radiant light. And the Quran is a proof for you or against you. Everybody goes out in the morning and sells his soul, then he sets it free. He either frees it from slavery or destroys it. Related by Muslim. We were at the Quran is a proof, right? We are told that the Quran is a proof in our life. The Muslim is guided by the Quran. So we live the Quran. We live by the Quran, and we should not live life abandoning the Quran, because the Quran is the one that guides us and helps us to live a good life in this world, and then inshallah bless us with a good life and helps us to gain a good life in the next world. Those guided by the Quran will not go astray. That's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. We must allow ourselves, we must guide ourselves with the Quran. The Quran is a cure for both material and moral illnesses. So everything is in the Quran. It will help to cure us from material and moral illnesses. People live life either to benefit themselves or destroy themselves. As Rasulullah said, that's how people live. They live life, they move on in life, they wake up in the morning, they go out in life, they work here and there, they do all kinds of things. Either that to benefit themselves, either they become a slave of everything on earth, or they become a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they benefit themselves by that. Then when you become a slave of other things, then you destroy yourself. Constant remembrance of Allah protects one from the hellfire. A true believer sells his soul to Allah for paradise. That's what it is from the hadith advises one, faith is word and deed. That means you must say it and you must believe in it, and it sometimes increases and decreases. Deeds have weight, they can be light or heavy. Good deeds are heavy, evil deeds are light. Maintaining the prayers in their specific time is very important. Never miss out on our prayers at their proper times. Frequently spending on good causes, you need to put in effort to find ways and means to spend on good things. Patience in the face of adversity, as mentioned, patience is like holding yourself when things are not easy. Do it, face the adversity with getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is the Muslim's constitution, it is our life, it is how we should lead our life, it is a manual for us. So constitution means it's the way our life should be governed, is the Quran. If Muslim strives to benefit from his time, we work hard so that our time is not wasted doing useless things. All right, so that's our finish of Hadith 24, commentary on Hadith 24. We go on to Hadith 23, then we go on to Hadith 24. It's very, very long. Tahrim al-dhul. An Abi Dharr al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu an-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam fima yarwihi an rabbihi subhanahu wa ta'ala annahu qala ya ibadi inni haramtu zulma ala nafsi wa ja'altuhu bainakum muharraman fala tadhalamu. Ya ibadi kullukum dallu illa man hadaituhu fastahduni ahdikum. Ya ibadi kulluhum ja'i illa man at'amtuhu fastat'imuni ut'imkum. Ya ibadi kulluhum 'arin illa man kasautuh fastaksuni aksukum. Ya ibadi innakum tukhti'una bil-laili wan-nahar wa ana aghfiru dhunuba jami'an fastaghfiruni aghfir lakum. Ya ibadi innakum lan tablughu darri fatadurruni walan tablughu naf'i fatanfa'uni. Ya ibadi law anna awwalakum wa akhirakum wa insakum wa jinnakum كانوا على أتقى قلب رجل واحد منكم ما زاد ذلك في ملكي شيئا يا عبادي لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنساكم وجنكم كانوا على أفجر قلب واحد منكم ما نقص ذلك من ملكي شيئا يا عبادي لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنساكم وجنكم قاموا في صعيد واحد فسألوني فأعطيت كل واحد مسألته ما نقص ذلك مما عندي إلا كما ينقص المخيط إذا أدخل البحر يا عبادي إنما هي أعمالكم أحصيها لكم ثم أوفيكم إياها فمن وجد خيرا فليحمد الله ومن وجد غير ذلك فلا يلومن إلا نفسه رواه المسلم. All right, very long hadith. Let's go through its meaning. Injustice has been declared unlawful. It is on the authority of Abu Dhar al-Ghifari that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated, except from his Rabb, that from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, so this is Hadith Qudsi, O my slaves, I have forbidden injustice for myself and I have forbidden it between you, so do not wrong one another. O my slaves, all of you are astray except those whom I guide. So seek guidance from me and I will guide you. O my slaves, all of you are hungry except those whom I feed. So ask me for food and I will feed you. O my slaves, all of you are naked except those whom I clothe. So ask me for clothing and I will clothe you. O my slaves, you make mistakes by night and by day, and I forgive all sins. So ask for my forgiveness and I will forgive you. O my slaves, you can reach my harm and thus harm me, and you can never reach my harm and thus harm me, and you can never reach my benefit and thus benefit me. O my slaves, even if the first of you and the last of you and your human beings and your jinn and all had the heart of the most pious man among you, that would not increase my kingdom in the least. O my slaves, even if the first of you and the last of you, your human beings and your jinn, all had the heart of the most wicked man among you, that would not decrease my kingdom in the least. O my slaves, even if the first of you and the last of you, your human beings and your jinn, were to stand on one flat piece of land and ask me, and I gave each and every one what he asked for, that would only take away from what I have made a little takes when it's dipped in the sea. O my slaves, there are only your actions that I enumerate for you, and then I will reward you for them. So whoever finds good, let him praise Allah, and whoever finds other than that, let him blame no one but himself. Related by Muslim. Muslim has written this hadith in the book of righteousness, the chapter on injustice being declared unlawful. So this is the only one who related this hadith, and it is a hadith Qudsi. The importance of the hadith. This is a hadith Qudsi that is sublime, divine, and blessed. It comprises immense principles and foundations of Islam, as well as branches and etiquettes. And Nawawi has mentioned in his book Al-Adhkar that Abu Idris al-Khawlani, who narrated it from Abu Dhar, would fall on his knees when reading it out of exaltation and reverence for it. That means he is so affected by this hadith that he fell on his knees, because he is out of exaltation and reverence for the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The men in the chain of transmission are Damascene, that means they're from Damascus. Ahmad ibn Hanbal said the people of Asham do not have a more distinguished hadith. Right? Asham, the people of Damascus are the people of Sham. The Sham is a bigger area which comprise of Damascus or Syria. Syria is Sham. Syria is not Sham. Sham is actually a bigger area. Syria, Jordan, part of Jordan and Palestine, right? Those is considered under the Sham. And maybe some say Lebanon also, right? So these are people of Damascus. This is the best hadith that they ever have. The language of the hadith. Haram to zulm. Haram to zulm. I made haram the injustice. Linguistically, zulm means to put something in other than its place, right? You're supposed to be kind to people and you're unkind. You're supposed to obey Allah, but you disobey Him. You're supposed to honor Allah, but you dishonor Him. You're supposed to believe that Allah is the only God, but you give Him partners, and that is called zulm. It is to transgress the bounds and dispose of people's right without any right. You go against all bounds, all limits, and you do not give the people their due rights, and that's called zulm. It is impossible for Allah, the Exalted Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. The meaning of I have forbidden injustice for myself is I will never do it. Allah will never be unjust to anyone. Allah will never be unfair to anyone. So never ever say Allah did wrong to you, because Allah will never do any wrong to anyone. I'm exalted and sanctified above it. It is beyond Allah, right, to actually do any form of injustice. Dal. Unaware of any revealed law before messages are sent. Dal means to be astray, right? Dal means to be astray. Illa man hadiyata. Illa, except those whom I guided. So illa, whoever I hadaitahu, right? I have guided him. Hadaituhu, no, hadaituhu, the start is you. I guided, except those whom I guided. I have guided him to what the messengers have brought and granted him success therein. So it is a gift. The word hadiyah, hadiyah is the meaning of huda, hadiyah, all of the same root word. Hadiyah as in gift is also from the same root word as huda. Huda is guidance. So guidance is actually a gift from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Fastahaduni, fa is then istahaduni from the word hadiyah, also then seek guidance from me. Sa'idin wahid, one piece of land, one land and one location. The origin of Sa'id is the face of the earth. So the word Sa'id means earth, right? Wahid is one land. As Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has said, Fatayammamu sa'idan tayyiban, then take your tayammum with good soil, pure earth. Surah An-Nisa and Surah Al-Ma'idah, same verse. Fatayammamu sa'idan tayyiban. Mikhyat means a needle. Ahasiha lakum. Ahasiha lakum. That means I count it for you. I determine them precisely with my knowledge and my guardian angels. Hasaya is to count. So Allah will make sure it is known. Ufikum iyaha. Ufikum iyaha. I will grant you the reward in the hereafter. Ufikum means I will complete, right, for you, whatever it is. Iyaha. Especially of it, that means your rewards. All right, let's go to the legal matters and other guidance from the hadith. First, the definition of hadith Qudsi. As we said, this is hadith Qudsi. What is hadith Qudsi? A hadith Qudsi is what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrates from his Rabb, sometimes through the medium of Jibreel alayhi salam, and sometimes via revelation, inspiration, or in his lip, and is authorized to express it whatever words he wishes. So he is inspired by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. As we know, not all the time revelations come via Malaikat Jibreel alayhi salam. At times it comes with a tingling of the bell, right? In dreams, comes with some kind of inspiration, right? And he and Rasulullah goes through those kind of moments quite a bit. So his hadith Qudsi is from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Hadith Qudsi only differs from a prophetic hadith in that Rasulullah attributed to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So it says it is a hadith that he says it. It's not the Quran, right? Although it comes from Allah, but it comes to Allah. So Allah says this, but it is not part of the Quran. It's a hadith which comes from Allah Subhanahu wa wa ta'ala, which are the wordings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not the wordings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's why it is ascribed to Allah, the exalted, in most cases. When that happens, it is an attribution of origination because He, the glorified, is the one speaking initially. So it's to understand that this hadith originates from Allah. Of course, everything originates from Allah, but it is specifically mentioned to be said by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It can also be ascribed to Rasulullah because he is relating from his Rabb. So hadith Qudsi is called, that's why it's called a hadith. It's not a Quranic verse because it is mentioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says it is he said it, but from the message of Allah subhanahu. Part of defining a hadith Qudsi is to elucidate the numerous differences between it and the holy and the noble Quran. So it's very important to differentiate the hadith from the Quran. The Rasulullah was very particular of people who were writing the hadith and make sure they know it is a hadith and it's not part of the Quran. And what is Quran is Quran, right? And so we are aware that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam received the verses of the Quran not in the whole verse, except for 1 or 2 surahs which came in the whole verse, right? A few surahs, but most of the surahs, that, for example, Surah Al-Baqarah, right, took about 10 years, the whole of the 10 years in which Rasulullah was in Medina, right, the Quran, Surah Baqarah was revealed. And as Surah Baqarah was revealed, Surah An-Nisa was revealed, Surah Al-Ma'idah was revealed, all the surahs, all the 28 surahs, and we know there are 28 surahs revealed in Medina, most of the very long surahs were revealed all at different times. So that is why if anyone is to say that the names of the surah is not given by Rasulullah, so that's quite difficult to understand, because if Rasulullah is to make a reference, for example, right, this today, example is an example, example is to just to illustrate. Today, the angel came down with Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 30. And tomorrow is Surah An-Nisa, verse 25. And the next day is Surah Ma'idah, verse 17. Now, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam does not name the surahs, how can he make references on where to put these verses? It'll be quite difficult. It'll be a daunting task for most of those who are receiving the Quran. And as we can see, with this kind of coming down of the verses of the Quran, and not only that, in Surah Al-Baqarah also, the verses did not come in order, in the chronological order. That means sometimes you might have the 30th verse coming, then the next day is the 100th verse coming, another day the 10th verse. These examples, but this is what is we are told of the bringing down of the verses of the Quran. So it's not chronological, as in, it's not following the sequence, not chronological. It's chronological, it's with time. So it's not in sequence. The verses of the Quran don't come in sequence. So you can imagine how strong the memories of those people who didn't write. The Quran was written during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So if anybody is to say it was not written during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, then they are just liars. Because it was written, there were scribes to write, and when the Quran was to be compiled during the caliphate of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, right, it was required that 2 pieces of the writing of that verse be given, be obtained before it is considered as valid verses from the Quran. So the Sahabas would know by then, because the whole of the Quran was revealed by Rasulullah to Rasulullah on after he passed on, right? So there are many memorizers of the Quran. Memorizers means they are able to put in all the verses and remember the Quran, and not reading the Quran, or like us nowadays, our memorizers all read through the Quran first and then try to memorize. No, they don't. They have such powerful memories that they could place the verses accordingly and know which surah comes after which surah comes after which surah, and even the arrangement of the surahs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with such great memory. It's really, really astounding. The Noble Quran is inimitable, mu'jiz in both wording and meaning, while a hadith is not inimitable, right? So the Quran is impossible to be imitated, right? It's nothing, no one can produce like the Quran, although they have tried to produce, but those who have knowledge will know it is not the Quran. you have this now this AI, whatever online, and they have produced lots of nonsense online. There are good things, of course, with the AI helps people to find out materials and things like that, but not all the time is good. So we need to have proper knowledge to understand, to know the Quran well. Hadiths can be changed, and people have changed, have introduced lots of false hadiths also. B, it is valid to recite the Noble Quran in prayer, while it is not valid to recite the Hadith Qudsi in prayer. So this is the difference between the Quran and the Hadith Qudsi. Right? You can't, just because it's related from Allah, you cannot recite it in your prayer, right, as a verse of the Quran, because it is not the Quran. Rasulullah was very clear to differentiate the Qudsi from the Quran. In fact, it would nullify the Salat. The one who denies the Quran is a disbeliever. The one who denies Hadith Qudsi is a fasiq, right? I mean, sinful. But the Quran, that's it. You cannot deny the Quran. You are straight away a disbeliever. All right, so these are the main points that we have. We're going to go on extra points, right? And we'll continue, inshallah, in the next lesson. We continue with our Fussilat. We did verses 38, the verse 38, one verse only in the last lesson. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Among its signs is the still earth which stirs and swells when Allah sends down red water. So Allah brings our attention right to the earth. Earth is quiet, and when water comes down, you see movements in the earth. You see seeds sprouting out of the earth. You see the soil also being pushed up as the seed grows out of the earth. He who gives life is the giver of life to the dead. So Allah is Al-Muhyi, the one who gives life, and He gives life to the dead. Whether it is a dead soul, the dead human, whatever dead, He can give them life. He has power over all things, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He can do whatever He wants to do. All right, we continue with the next verse. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابَ. And surely we gave Musa the book. فَخَتُولِفَ فِيهِ. Then they dispute arose in it. Walaula, and if not, kalimatun, a word, sabaqat, preceded min rabbika, from your Rabb, laqudiya bainahum, surely decided between them. Laqudiya bainahum. Wa innahum lafi shakkim minhu murib, and surely they definitely in doubt of it and suspicious. All right. And certainly we gave the book to Musa alayhi salam, but it has been differed about. And that not a word already gone forth from your Rabb, judgment would certainly have been given between them, and most surely they are in disquieting doubt about it. They are in doubt about it. All right. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا. Now Allah just mentioned, after Allah mentioned His powers and everything, He talks about the book that He sent to Musa. Surely we have sent Musa the book. But then, after the book was given, then they start to differ in it. Who are this they? Then differences exist in it. There's not they here. Then fakhatulifa. Then differences exist in it. Allah then emphasized that He gave Musa the book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Musa alayhi salam, to console Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran adds that if his people raise objections and fabricated pretexts concerning the Quran, he should not worry, for Allah had also provided Musa with the Torah, and it became then an object of their differences. Some accepted it, while others rejected it. So this is what it is. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, the book of Nabi Musa was sent to the people of Bani Israel. Bani Israel are the children of Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam. And Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam, right, he was as a prophet, has a son, Yusuf alayhi salam. They migrated to Egypt under the invitation of Yusuf alayhi salam. And they stayed there for some time. Eventually they became, at that time there was no Pharaoh. But when Pharaoh appeared, somehow the people of Bani Israel became the slaves of Pharaoh, of the people of Egypt. Right, and Musa was sent to freedom from the clutches or from the humiliation they suffered as slaves of the Egyptian. And this book was given to Nabi Musa alayhi salam while he was traveling with them from Egypt to Palestine. So they are people who had faith, people who have seen miracles, right? And somehow, after the book was revealed, then they differed in it because certain things in the books of Allah are not palatable to some people, and so they rejected it. This verse answers an objection. The Jews would teach this objection to people that what is the need of a new book when the Torah, which is also Allah's book, is already present. And the Quran also acknowledges it as a book from Allah. The Quran has answered this question from various aspects, which is cited in various surahs. So here we have a time where the Jews are involved already in the mission of Rasulullah. So why is that so? Because this is towards the end of Rasulullah's mission in Mecca. He's in Mecca for 13 years. This is about the 10th or 11th year of his mission. And the news of the Prophet, of course, has traveled far and wide. But the fact that Mecca was the center of pilgrimage, right, among the polytheists, because they have their gods around Kaaba, and they still practice the various rites taught by Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam in doing the Hajj. They do Hajj and they do Umrah also. Now, but so people have been going to Mecca for the past 10, 11 years, and people of Medina also goes to Mecca, and they came back with the news of a prophet in Mecca. And so they start, the people of the Quraysh or polytheists, and have not been given the book for a long time, right? Looked up at the Jews. The Jews were in Mecca, in Medina, right? Why are the Jews in Medina? Because they were informed from their books that the last prophet will be in Medina, and they were hoping that one of their descendants would be the last prophet. So they were there, not because they're eager to find the last prophet. Right? Anyway, the Quraysh has been asking questions about the Jew, bringing this message to the Jews, and the Jews sort of come around with this saying that why should there be a book from God when we already have the book of Torah? So they are denouncing the prophet in that sense. Here the answer given is that it is an established fact that the Almighty gave Torah to Musa alayhi salam. So yes, true what you said, that Musa was given the book by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they have the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, this is also an established fact that differences and discrepancies were created in it. So question is, why is there a need for another book when the book was given to Musa already? So Allah is explaining here, yes, the book was given to Musa alayhi salam, but after it was given to Musa alayhi salam, there were differences concerning what was in the book. And so a new book, Allah sent another book to correct all the discrepancies and the differences that arise with the Bani Israel, the Jews. And the Jews are people who followed Nabi Musa alayhi salam. The words fahatu lifafi refer to discrepancies which are found in every blatant form in the various books of the Torah. So that is what Allah is referring to tell the people of Mecca that you can't trust the Torah now. Not all of it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are changes that have been made of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there exists mere differences in interpretation in something, then this can be resolved by consulting the original text, parallels, and precedences. However, when there exists an open discrepancy and contradiction in the original, then these differences cannot be resolved. Right? So if the interpretation is a problem, we can always look at the original text and see what was said in it. But now the text itself was changed. So how to look at the text? We don't know which part of the text is from Allah and which part of the text has been changed by these people to suit their whims and fancies. Thus, it is a fact that a single subject has been mentioned in the various portions of the Torah in so many contradictory ways that it becomes difficult, in fact, to possibly reach the actual. There are many examples of these contradictions in the Torah. Here, one of these contradictions, the ones found regarding the predictions of the advent of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they have changed. They have, as in the Surah Baqarah later on in Medina, more is exposed of the evil of the Bani Israel. How they changed the verses, they disguised the verses, they covered up the verses, they hide the verses so that the truth is not seen. Had the Jews not created these contradictions by interpolations in the Torah, they would have very easily understood why the Almighty revealed the Quran after the Torah. After Musa alayhi salam, what was the void in religion that needed to be fulfilled, that necessitated the advent of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if they've been sincere about it, they would know, they would understand why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is needed, right, to complete the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Jews, out of their wretchedness, tried to hide this reality. And in this manner, they not only led themselves astray, but also were instrumental in leading many others astray. Some of the books of Torah were kept in total secrecy. No one except a select few knew their contents because they contained things which Jewish scholars did not like others to read because of their vested interests. And we have seen how in the life story of Salman al-Farisi, who traveled from Persia and went up north to Syria and met a number of, and were actually working under a number of priests, rabbis and Christian priests, and he actually had access, right, to the origins, the original or the hidden Torah, which talks about the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the last Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Jews were very clear about who this last Prophet was. They had ample evidence or ample information in their Torah to describe the Prophet of Allah. That is why the Jews in Medina, those who went to see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some of them converted because they are pure in their hearts, but some of them declined because they don't like it that he is an Arab. And they had been threatening the Arabs of the coming of a prophet, and now the prophet is an Arab. It doesn't go well with them, so they can't accept him as a prophet. They have to deny him and fight against him. But those who are sincere in heart, like the Christian from Najran, I think, from a group of Christians, in Surah Al-Qasas, Allah mentioned them, who came down to see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when they heard the verse of the Quran, they cried because their hearts are inclined to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such things were even altered by them, and they were successful too in this alteration. The creation of contradiction in such a book is not amazing at all, and the obvious result of this contradiction is that the truth is totally lost, and the people once again are engulfed in the darkness, the very darkness of the people out from which divine light was revealed. And such differences are created within people, and there is no means left to resolve them. So this is what it is. Right, they have created enough problems in them. They have created, the book has been changed so much that the book is no more a divine light for them. They were given divine light, they were given mercy, they were given lots, but they changed it and they have plunged themselves into darkness. وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةٌ سَبَقَتْ مِنْ رَبِّكَ لَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُم. If not because of a word that has gone ahead from your Rabb, definitely they would be, the decree would be between them, be made between them. The word kalima carries a meaning that Allah will not punish anyone until the proof has been established against him and a messenger has been sent to him. So because Allah has said that he would send messengers, right, to tell people, then he would punish them. Before that, he would not punish them. Allah is not hasty in punishing his enemies or his disobedient slaves. It is for the sake of expediency and pragmatism in their education, which requires such a course of action. So it's important that they understand and they follow that Allah allows them to understand things. Allah gives them guidance, and that is why Rasulullah is sent to them so that they would ponder over, and they were given a chance actually, right? Or else they would be punished for their actions. Then they will be punished for their actions. And if pragmatism is such a case, did not allow for it, the program which Allah had preordained for the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in this respect did not require further delays, judgment would have been passed upon them and the punishment would have been inflicted upon them. So if not because of what Allah has said, right, that he would give them guidance and allow them time to accept the guidance and change their ways, if not because of that, they would be punished for their corruption and adulteration of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The words are a very severe threat. And since this objection was taught by the Jews, the words of this threat are sounded by referring to these Jews. The implied meaning is that the Jews even now regard themselves to be the recipients of the Torah and conceitedly think that the religious and political leadership they had acquired because of Torah still lies with them and no one can challenge it. So they are not happy that the Quran comes through Rasulullah SAW, because where they are concerned, they are the owners of the books of Allah, the book of Allah. They are the recipients of the message of Allah, and they are the special people, the chosen ones, and they don't like people to see that otherwise than that they are not chosen ones. The fact is that because of the injustice in the book of Allah, they deserve that the court of Allah decide their fate by punishing them. But the Almighty has fixed a day for deciding the date of each nation. For this reason, they have been granted respite. However, this respite, nevertheless, is a respite which will end one day, and they will taste the punishment of this oppression. Their oppression, their zulm is called oppression, is that they change the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remove it from its original positions. وَإِنَّهُمْ لَفِي شَقٍّ مِّنْهُ مُرِيبٍ. And surely they definitely in doubt of it referring to the Quran, definitely in suspicion. This is their reality. Allah emphasized the condition of being in serious doubt of it. Their words of disbelief are not due to any wisdom or insight on their part. Rather, they spoke without any attempt at examining it thoroughly. So they say things which are against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They say things which is blasphemous because they don't look at the Quran. They don't want to look at the Quran. So Israelites receive the book in their own language, but even then differed about its teachings, failed to preserve it, lost it completely, rewrote it, and edited it multiple times, created multiple versions of it, so that not much of the original revelation was left intact in the version they currently have. These changes, interpolations, and additions by ignorant mortals created many inconsistencies and contradictions in its text and introduced many illogical and unscientific statements into it. So this is the result of changing the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of messing with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As if that much corruption in the book was not enough, the remaining text was further distorted by rabbinical explanations and verdicts. Due to these reasons, many Jews themselves have serious doubts about the book, its contents, and its teachings. So in this brief sentence in Nahum, Lafi Shakim Minhu Murib. So this is the who here refers to the book of they themselves are in doubt of the book, because the book has so many contradictions, so many things which doesn't seem to be going well. Why? Because they have inserted, they have distorted, they have changed, they have disguised it. The spiritual disease of the believers of Mecca had been clearly diagnosed. It says that they are involved in doubt about the Quran and the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and this doubt has caused them great anguish and confusion. So now, this one is explaining the you as the Quran, and it's referring to the people of Quraysh. This is although apparently they deny the Quran being Allah's words and the Holy Prophet ﷺ being his messenger very vehemently, yet this denial is not based on any conviction, but their minds are afflicted with great vacillation and doubt. That is what it is. They are completely immersed in doubt concerning it, with lots of suspicion of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why are they suspicious? Because it denounced their base desires, right? It is against their base desires that they don't like. On the one hand, their selfish motives, their interests, and their prejudices demand that they should belie the Quran or deny the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ, and oppose them strongly. On the other hand, their hearts are convinced from within that the Quran is in fact a unique and unparalleled word, the like of which has never been heard from any literary man or poet. So they are Arabs with very great proficiency in the Arabic language, and they know these words cannot be but from God, right? Not from Rasulullah ﷺ. Neither can the insane utter such words in their madness, nor can devils come to teach God worship, piety, and righteousness to the people. So that's what the Quran is all about, teaching people worship, piety, and righteousness. Wise, when they say that Muhammad ﷺ is a liar, their hips from within put them to shame and ask, can such a person ever be alive? So when they brand him a madman, their hearts cry out from within and ask, do you really think that he is mad? When they accuse Rasulullah ﷺ is not interested in the truth, but is working for selfish motives, their hearts from within curse them and ask, do you call this virtuous man selfish, whom we have never seen striving for the sake of wealth, power, and fame, whose life has been free from every track of self-interest, who has always been working to bring about goodness and piety, but has never acted for any selfish motive. So they know it in themselves that Rasulullah SAW, they cannot have any doubt of him, although they want to have doubt of him, suspicion of him, but it cannot hold well in their hearts because they know this man very well. All right, we'll end lesson with a dua. With istighfar. Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqtani wa ana abduka wa ana ala ahdika wa wa'dika mastata'tu a'udzu bika min syarri ma sana'tu abu'u laka bi ni'matika alayya wa abu'u bi dhanbi faghfir li innahu la yaghfiru dzunuba illa anta. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbana anfa'na bima 'allamtana. Rabbi 'allimna alladhi yanfa'una. Rabbi faqihna wa faqih ahlana wa qarabatin lana fi dinina ma'a ahli al-qutri untha wa dhakar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Ila allazina amanu wa 'amilus solihat wa tawasaw bil haqq وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. الحمد لله. الحمد